Hi everybody, my name is Caitlin. Welcome back to my channel. Today's episode we're going to be talking about oil paints, and I don't do a lot of oil painting. It's something I'm just getting into, but I have bought several different oil paints from a lot of different brands as I kind of figure out which ones I like best and which work and which ones don't, in my opinion. So today I am going to show you all the different oil paints that I have, and I'm going to do a swatch of each one so you'll be able to see consistency, you'll be able to see vibrancy, you'll be able to see kind of how oily they are versus how hard and stiff. So anyways, this is kind of really valuable information for a lot of people that are kind of getting into oil painting, and they just want to see what kind of quality some of these paints are. So it's not going to be an oil painting demonstration. I'm not ready for that yet. However, we're going to be looking at several different oil paints. We're going to be looking at Rembrandt, Gamblin, Winsor and Newton, Utrecht, and Old Holland. So those are the 5 different brands that I have. We're just going to be looking at a few colors of each, but you'll see how they kind of spread across the palette and then onto the surface of the canvas. So today I'm actually just using paper, but you'll be able to kind of see how they spread out. But anyways, if you like this sort of a demonstration, then thumbs up on the video, and then write a comment below and I'll make more videos like this. I'm just trying to get a feel for what I like to do and what you guys like to see. So anyways, also hit subscribe, and let's get to the video. So the first oil paint set I bought was a Rembrandt set, and it came with 10 different colors, and I bought them I think at Jerry's. And so this was my first foray into oil paints. So the first 5 colors are going to be Rembrandt Permanent Matter Medium, Rembrandt Permanent Red Light, Rembrandt Permanent Yellow Medium, Permanent Lemon Yellow, and Permanent Green Deep. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how they lay onto the palette as you squeeze them out. So I feel like these are a nice buttery consistency. They do not, they're not too oily and they're not too thick. So a lot of artists have preference one way or the other. These are pretty nice. I have enjoyed working with Rembrandts. And this set was actually really good. As you can see, the yellow medium, the permanent yellow medium, is a little bit on the more oily side. As you can see, just as I laid down, it kind of splotched out a little bit more. The only problem that I really felt like I had with this set is that it didn't come with a burnt umber, which I use a lot, and there were just other colors that I felt I wouldn't use. But I guess for a person who's just starting, they don't really know what colors they like, and I just got oil paint all over my sweatshirt, which I'm kind of mad about because oil paint does not really come out. So let me just take care of this emergency while I still can, and I'm going to put a little bit of paint thinner. This is just odorless mineral spirits, and I don't know if I should put it on my sweatshirt, but let's see. Alright, well that looks horrible, but truthfully I didn't really like this sweatshirt anyways, and I just kind of wear it around the house, and it's kind of cold in my studio. Alright, so now I'm going to make some color swatches. Here we go. And again, this is pretty buttery, and it's not too thick, and I wouldn't say it's too thin either. I think it's really nice. All right. Just want to make sure you guys can see. And I'm using a square brush just so I can kind of get it nicely to a square shape. So this is a pretty deep red. Very good. It looks like a blood red. I put way too much on there. I feel like I've wasted it, but I'll kind of lay it on thick. The problem with oil paints is that they just take forever to dry. But, I mean, I guess that's one of the reasons why people like them so much. You can go back to something like days later and it's still super wet. Okay, and in case you're wondering, my odorless mineral spirit I use is from Speedball. It's called Mona Lisa, and it's pretty inexpensive, and I feel like it works just as well as Gamsol. All right, so my next color is going to be Rembrandt Permanent Light, and again, look at how nice and buttery that is. It just it lifts up just a bit to show you that it has some you know, viscosity to it, some consistency, but it's nice and oily too. So I think Rembrandt is a pretty good set. Okay, so let's see. This is really orangey. I wouldn't call this permanent red. I'd call it orange, but whatever. What do I know? And that looks really nice, but again, it's like orange. All right. Now it's a good idea to get in the habit of capping your odorless mineral spirits, because what can happen is you could accidentally drink it. Okay, so now I'm going to go with the permanent yellow medium, and this is the one that I said was already like a little bit more on the oily side, but not overwhelmingly so. And I love this yellow color. This is like really nice and yellow. I don't tend to like yellow, I mean lemon yellow, because it's a little too bright, but this is just really pretty. All right, there it is. Okay, here's my permanent lemon yellow. Again, this is going to be really bright. Yeah, it's like fluorescent. Not my favorite color, not one I tend to use. That's why it's still so filled, but I think, you know, you end up using more colors than you think. So don't just buy the colors that you think are pretty, because those are the ones you won't use as much. That's what I find. I go right for the pinks and purples, and then I never use them, and I just think they are so pretty. But, you know, in reality, I use browns, I use a lot of, I don't know, I guess it depends. I do still lifes a lot with my oils, and so I do a lot of apples, so I tend to need red. Now, if you notice, this green, the permanent green deep, is a little bit on the thick side. It's not really oily at all. It's almost like dry. I don't know if that's the color or just my bottle, because I have used these before, my tube rather. I have used these fairly frequently. And that's kind of your really green. So here's my next batch of Rembrandt Oil Colors. So the first one is called Sèvres Blue. And this is a really good example of why I recommend always swatching your colors, whether you're doing oils, whether you're doing acrylics, whatever, because if you notice, this bottle tells me that this is more of like an aqua blue. So kind of between blue and green, a little more on the bluish side, but also very light. This color that actually comes out is not, it's just not representative of what the tube color is, okay? So I think anytime you have a medium that's coming out of a tube, you should always swatch it out.
That also goes for inks like Copic markers and things like that. It's not always a true representation of the color that's on the bottle. All right, so here's my Sèvres blue. I'm not even sure if I'm pronouncing that right. Okay, and as you can see, it's pretty light blue, but it is rich, and I would say that's pretty vibrant. There we go. Nice blue. Next up is the Ultramarine Deep. Now this is a color that you really want to have because a lot of other colors, it's kind of like a primary color that you can mix all of the colors with. So if you're working with a limited palette, I would say Ultramarine Deep is a good one to have. Okay, so I'm saying in my mind that these are all really vibrant colors. And my work doesn't tend to be on the vibrant side, but that's okay. It's still nice to have these bright colors. And mostly you're mixing, and when you start mixing colors, they dull down a little bit. So if you start with vibrant colors, then as you mix, they won't be as dull maybe. There's the burnt sienna. And last but not least, we're going to do ivory black. Now, a lot of people will tell you, don't bother buying black because you can just mix it with all your other colors and black doesn't occur in nature, blah, blah, blah. Well, I use so much black. As you can see, I'm running out. I'm actually going to the store this weekend to buy more. And this one is actually also on, I was going to say, it's not runny. None of these colors I would call runny the way I've heard some other brands are. But this black tends to be on the dry side, I would say, compared to the other colors in Rembrandt. All right. Now it also came with white, but I used it up. But I have another white to show you today. Actually two. There they are. So they're all very vibrant, I would say. They have pretty good coverage. It took me maybe 2 swatches to get to the opacity that I reached here. And I would say overall they look pretty good. So they are the Rembrandts. This is Winsor Newton, and this is their artist's grade. So they do have a line called Winton, which is more of a student grade, but this one is their artist grade. And I can look at all of that oil. This is a very oily color, especially after using the Rembrandts. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with oily colors, but it's something to note. I prefer them to be a little oilier because I don't really use much oil in my paints. I tend to use walnut oil, and sometimes I forget to use it. So it actually comes in handy when there's oil already in the paint. Okay. Next, I am going to this is Utrecht, and this is a warm white. Utrecht is a brand that Blick carries. And I don't know the history of Utrecht, but I'm pretty sure it used to be a store, but I don't know where they are. But Blick kind of absorbed this brand, I think. But this one's warm white, so it should be more on the whiter side. It's very pretty, and I've never used this one before either. So let's just see how it comes out. Oh yeah, love it. So this is not oily the way Winsor and Newton was. It reminds me more of how Rembrandt kind of behaved out of the tube. So this one's warm gray. This one, see, this one is actually pretty oily. Okay, see that? All right, oh my goodness, okay. All right, well, I don't know how much I like that. However, it's good to note. And here is another Utrecht, and this is manganese violet. So let's see how oily this is. I mean, was I supposed to be like squeezing these or something before to make it not come out oily? I'm really surprised that that happened. But nonetheless, that is why we do this video. I just don't want it to leak through the paper. All right, so here's the Winsor Newton. And it's got a very creamy texture for sure. It feels thicker than Rembrandt, but it was on the oilier side, so it's kind of a weird combination. But okay, let's try it out. So this is Naples Yellow Light, and the color is gorgeous. This is my favorite color in the world. But the consistency is nice for sure. It is similar to Rembrandt, honestly. It was a little oily coming out of the tube, but it goes on pretty dry. I like that color. That looks good. Based on that, I would probably buy more Winsor and Newton. I don't know how it behaves on the canvas, but I do like how it just came out on this swatch. Now let's try the warm white. This was Utrecht, and it wasn't super oily, but it is a little thick. All right. I do really like it. It's hard to see, but it comes out really nice. It's just a shade more yellow than the white of the paper. Not bad. That looks really nice. All right, I'm a little afraid to try out my next color here. I don't like that it just basically pooped all over my page, but let's see. It's so oily. I mean, to be honest, I just feel like it's going to be so opaque. I mean, transparent. It's not really, it's not that bad. I like colors that are a little bit more opaque, but this is not coming out bad for how it just reacted when I squeezed it out. It is on the oily side. It's nice and kind of slick as I'm painting, but there it is. It's a really pretty color, I have to say. So the next one is also a violet color. It's manganese violet, and this also, as you can see, the oil is kind of pooling around the paint. So this I would call another oily paint. All right. It's a little bit on the transparent side. It's not bad. It's just, it's going to take a couple of layers to really get it to be thick. There it goes. I don't really like working with transparent paint. I do watercolors for that, you know. All right, there it is. Those are my Utrechts. So strangely enough, as oily as they kind of came out, they laid down on the paper pretty thickly, but I'm already seeing around the warm white that the oil is like seeping a little bit, which just tells me it's, you know, really on the oily side. Look at the difference on the palette. The Rembrandts there wasn't a lot of oil spillage and there really wasn't a lot of, there's not a lot of oil that's kind of around the sides, as opposed to this one that's very oily, and you can even see kind of where the oil's coming out around the sides. So I would say Winsor Newton and Utrecht are definitely on the oilier side, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. A lot of artists prefer to work with oilier paints. They are oil paints after all. So I've used Old Holland before. This is not my first time opening up these bottles. However, I will say that although they are very expensive and they're kind of known as the creme de la creme of oil paints, they are very stiff inside, and they are like the opposite of the oil that we just worked with the Utrecht. So let me just show you this. I mean, it's so stiff. Look at that. There's nothing wrong with that. I just took out way too much, but I wanted you to visualize how thick these paints are. There is like either very high pigment and low oil, or I don't know, but I think that's the only conclusion I can draw, really. But this is, and I love this color, it's so brilliant, but look, there's no way this is gonna fall out. You really gotta smear it on. Now this, a lot of artists prefer something like this because they add their own oil, right? So they want to save money and just have really pure pigments. I get it. However, it just ends up being a little stiff for me. And as I said, I don't tend to add oil, and it's mainly because I forget sometimes. And I've just done a couple of oil paintings that have come out really nicely with a very scant amount of oil. So that's why I tend not to do that. It's hard to tell, but it is a little transparent. A second coat will make it nice and thick. There we go. The next one I'm going to use is the Brilliant Pink, and this is another Old Holland, and I mean, as you can see, it's just so stiff on there. Very pretty. I again bought the pink because I was like, oh my gosh, what a pretty color, but I mean, I can't think of a reason to use this color. I guess a sunset, but I don't do a lot of landscapes. But it is just so beautiful. I don't think I would be able to mix that on my own. Okay, that's pretty. But again, it's kind of on the transparent side, so a few layers definitely are needed. Okay. Again, it gets a 10 in my book for the sheer beauty of the color, but I don't really love the super thick oil paint. The other thing is they are very expensive, and so if your budget is tight or you're just starting out, then maybe it's not worth it. But some artists swear only by using Old Holland, so good for them. Next, we're going to use Gamblin. Now, these are very readily available. They call themselves artist grade. Some people say they're not. I don't know. You got to just take what some people say with a grain of salt. All right, now this is coming out pretty thick too. I've never used this one. This is very thick. This is thick like the Old Holland. Portland Cool Gray. This is a really nice color. I've used a lot of it so far. And it's a little bit more oily than the Burnt Umber, but that might just be characteristic of the pigment itself. Okay. Gamblin also has a student grade set. These are the artist quality. I think it's called 1980. if you want to buy the student set. And burnt umber is one that I use a lot. I haven't actually used this one yet, I don't think. Just because what I'm working on right now doesn't need it, but I do tend to use the color a lot in all my other work. So this is really nice and thick. I would say for burnt umber it was similar to a Old Holland. And I mean that because it was really thick when it came out of the tube, and it also required a couple of coats in order to get it really nice and opaque. This is Portland Cool Gray, and it's a little bit more on the oily side, but it's really nice and thick. A few coats are going to do it for this one too. There we go. So overall, I feel like using them all, it's interesting that I spaced them out, or arranged them rather, on this little template the way I did, because, and I'll try to get them a little closer so you can really see the color. The Winsor Newton, for Naples, this is a very vibrant Naples yellow. The Utrecht colors were very oily, but I still really like them. Like I said, I really like using more oily colors anyways, as opposed to Gamblin and Old Holland, which I felt were the most stiff out of the oil paints that I showed you today. But overall, the colors are really nice, and they all seem to be pretty vibrant to me. Even the warm white, I think, is pretty vibrant. It's hard to tell, but you know, it definitely has a lot of vividness, and I really like that color. So I'm going to also just remind you of the Rembrandts. Again, these ones, and it has to do with the colors chosen as well. These ones are just a lot more brighter than the other ones. Again, that's probably just more about which colors I chose. But these ones tended to be the perfect consistency. Not too oily, not too stiff. These were the Rembrandts. I would say these might be my favorite ones to use. But that doesn't mean that they're perfect or the best. I think it's good to have a, a nice balance, because again, the work that I've done has used a combination of all of these brands, and the work has come out really nice. But Winsor, Newton, and Utrecht are definitely the more oilier ones, and Old Holland and Gamblin will be the most stiff, and Rembrandt seems to be the perfect combination of the two. All right, well, if you guys have any more questions, then feel free to comment below and hit like and subscribe, and I'll make more videos like this. And just a sneak peek of what you will see next week, I bought, oh my gosh, where are they? Oh my goodness. Okay, well, there won't be any spoiler because I don't know where the paints went, but I am going to let you know that for next week we have the 12 shades of gray. That's all I'm going to say. So I look forward to seeing you next week with the 12 shades of gray. Thank you so much. Goodbye.